Let's solve equations by squaring both sides. And squaring both sides is something we do that when we see the variable inside of the square root operation, then we know that we can free it or take it out of the square root operation if we just use the inverse, which is to square the square root. Step 1. Identify and isolate the square root. So in this case, we have the square root over here. It's the square root of the variable y. And by isolate, we want to make sure that the square root is the only thing on one side of the equation. So for equation 1, the variable inside the square root has been identified and it is isolated on the left side of our equation. So step 1 is complete. How did we identify and isolate the square root? So first we identified the square root by just finding the square root operation, and it's already isolated, so we didn't have to do anything else except for recognize that it was isolated to begin with. Step 2. Square both sides and then solve for the variable. We're going to put parentheses around the entire square root operation, and the second power, that's our square. Then we're going to put parentheses around the entire right side of our equation and square that as well. So we have now used the square operation. When we square a square root, these are inverses. They basically cancel each other. What we are left with on the left side is everything under the square root, which is just this y. And that is equal to 6 squared, which is 6 times 6, 36. Y is all alone on one side of our equation, so we have solved the equation y equals 36. How did we solve the equation? To solve the equation number 1, after we made sure that our square root was isolated on one side, we then squared both sides, knowing that the square root would release the expression within the square root, and squaring the other side to keep the equation balanced, and we ended up with y equals 36. You are now ready to solve equation number 2 by squaring both sides.